Welcome, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I am Dr. Alicia Stout from CEM Coporation, and I am going to be talking to you about simple, rapid, and efficient automated solvent extraction. So with that, let's jump into it. Now, solvent extraction is a very broad technique which falls under the banner of sample preparation. If you look at that pie graph that was taken a few years ago from LCGC magazine, it is staggering to see how much of our time is spent on sample preparation. Okay, 62% of our time is on sample prep. In the last few decades, we have made tremendous strides when it comes to data analysis and chromatography and so forth, that's no longer the bottleneck. But when you look at what we're doing in our lab for sample preparation, a lot of it is manual techniques to take up a lot of time. And there is just a huge need to modernize sample preparation, to take it into the modern world, to take that pie graph and change that visual. Let's not spend so much time on sample preparation. And we'll be addressing a technique that can offer that here today. Now, I have a number of different solvent techniques mentioned there, from micro extraction, catchers, pressurized fluid extraction, sock slit, and so forth. That's not exhaustive. There are more techniques beyond that, but those are some of the more common ones. And all of them have some commonalities in the fact that they're time-consuming, use large amounts of solvent, can be costly, and can often have tedious preparation required. So I hope in what you see today and what I offer addresses some of these limitations in the area of sample preparation. And I'll be specifically referring back to two different techniques: catchers for the extraction of pesticides in food, and sock slit for the extraction of semi-volatile organic compounds in soil. Now, obviously, solvent extraction is not limited to those applications, but those are just two that are in quite different sectors that I'll be referencing in this presentation today. So the technique that I'm bringing to the table here is a new technology. It actually combines the processes of pressurized fluid extraction and dispersive solid phase extraction into one. So it has everything that is pressurized fluid extraction. You are heating and pressurizing in a sealed environment, okay? But prior to us doing that, we also agitate the sample as well through bubbling. So we have a dispersive effect that is occurring prior to the then pressurized fluid extraction. And so by combining these two techniques, you get a rapid, simple, and efficient extraction. And as I go through this presentation, we'll be expanding upon how we are achieving this. Now here is a schematic of edge extraction, which is what I'll be talking about through the rest of this talk. Now on the edge, you have a very simple Q-cup assembly. Our Q-cup is our sample holder. So that goes together in seconds. You simply weigh in your sample, drop it in the system. The system does everything else. You may need to adjust the volume of your sample. However, that is not necessary for all. Some you can go direct, straight to analysis without any volume adjustment whatsoever. So it will depend on the application if that is needed or not. So this is just a very basic schematic to kind of show you the total number of steps that may need to take place. Now let's look at that in comparison to some of the traditional techniques. So what we have depicted here is the standard steps to the catchers method. If you're not familiar with catchers, it stands for quick, easy, cheap, effective, rugged, and safe, and is one of the most common techniques used for the extraction of pesticides from food. It is traditionally a two-step process where it is a salt partitioning extraction followed by a dispersive solid phase extraction cleanup method. So it is a manual method combining shaking and centrifuging and a few different, you see the number of steps that can occur until you finally get to analysis. Okay, so if we look at that in comparison to the edge extraction, you see that obviously we've really minimized the amount of steps that a technician has to run. Okay, so we're really trying to simplify this. We want the person running this extraction to be able to set up samples, walk away, and be doing something else effective with their time versus constantly doing that manual extraction on catchers. So now let's look at another traditional method. What we have depicted here is the common steps of a sock slit extraction. And really, when you talk about extraction of solid samples, sock slit is still the gold standard. You see a lot of sock slit going on in labs throughout our world. And Soxhlet has been around for over 125 years, I think, at this point. I think Soxhlet has had its day. It works. Not trying to take anything away from Soxhlet, but again, it's a manual technique. It's very lengthy. It uses a lot of solvent. And there's just a need to modernize this technique. So if we look at Soxhlet in comparison to the edge, we see the same thing, right? Taking out a lot of those steps, so this is just a good visual to look at what the technician has to do for these different techniques and what the technician has to do on the edge. And obviously, there's other benefits beyond taking away the human error that can occur in these manual techniques. That technician be doing other stuff, as I mentioned, but also you gain the ability to report, you get traceability. There's just a lot of things that automation brings to the modern lab that are really beneficial. So let's just cover some of the general benefits. So rapid. Okay, so per sample, it's going to take less than 15 minutes. And 15 minutes is on the very long side. Okay, so like a pesticide extraction, that's going to take you more around 7 minutes. But at maximum, it's going to be 15 minutes per sample. And that 15 minutes includes the entire process, from the extraction to filtration to washing. So 15 minutes, you are running your next sample. It does run in series, one after the other. In general, you typically get solvent reduction. This is very big in comparison to Soxhlet, where you're using hundreds of milliliters and only around 30 milliliters on the edge. It is compact. It is not much bigger than an analytical balance. It is moderate cost, so it's something that labs can afford to implement into their workflow. You do get filtered samples in the end, so you get that benefit of going straight to analysis, so that's minimizing some of the other post-work steps that you would have to do with those traditional techniques. And again, I kind of harp on it, but the more I say it, the more you're going to remember it. Automation just brings a lot to the table as far as efficiency is concerned when running extraction. So I'm a very visual person, and so while I've talked about what the edge does, I want you to watch a video of it running, because then you have a really good visual of how it does what it's supposed to do. So you assemble your Q cup, which is your sample holder. You drop in your Q disc, which is your filter. You just screw the bottom on. It is only one thread. It can't be cross-threaded. It is really light. You can put it directly on an analytical balance and weigh your sample in. And then you load it on your rack with your collection vial. As you see, these racks are really easily interchangeable, so you could be preparing one is running. A few quick clicks and your sample is running. So then the edge is going to do its job. It's going to take that sample that you just prepared and it's going to put it in that back chamber. Once it's in that back chamber, that actuator is going to come down. It's going to create a sealed environment. So now we're going to take a look of a cross-section of what's going on back there so you can understand. So first you're going to add your solvent. The edge has 6 different solvent lines, so you have a lot of flexibility there. Once you have added your solvent and fully wetted your sample, you then have the option of bubbling. So the bubbling would occur at this point if you choose to do so. After bubbling, it is then going to pressurize and heat to a set temperature and or hold time. Okay, so once you've reached the set temperature and the hold time denoted in the method, it is then going to collect. Upon collection, it is going to go through the filter, so you get that filtered sample, through a cooling coil, and then collected in your collection vial. Once you've collected your initial extraction, you have an option of what we call our rinse. Our rinse is just going to add clean solvent and collect it right through. So it's not going to do any of the heating or pressurizing. It's just going to add solvent, run it right through the sample and the filter and the cooling coil and collect it in that same collection vial that you had your extract. At this point, your extraction's done, okay? But we are running in series, so we need to make sure that no carryover is occurring. So we are going to wash the entire fluidic pathway with solvent to ensure that no carryover occurs. So we remove that Q cup, wash the whole fluidic pathway. You'll see the edge doing that here. It's going to go to the waste port, which is in that back right-hand corner, and perform that wash. Once the wash is done, then it is going to move on to the next sample. It is that simple. And this was, FYI, this video was running in real time, okay? So we didn't have any long hold times or heating going on, but the automation, you saw that running as it would in real life. And now we have the final sample, and just it's a feel-good moment that you see that that sample we just extracted is fully dry. I mean, it just had solvent in it, now it's dry, so we've collected everything, and you've got a filtered extract ready to go to analysis. So I hope that gave you just a good visual of how the edge runs. Because again, I like to see things running, and I think that you guys do too. So let's move on and get further into how the edge works. So, I think this kind of point of this talk is to really highlight a new technology and what we bring to the table. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about our Q-cup, our sample holder, because that is really unique to what is traditionally used in other pressurized fluid extraction systems. It is just so very simple, right? And simple is a key here. Really can't mess it up. It's just 3 simple pieces. It goes together in seconds. And at the heart of everything, that's really what allows the edge to be as unique as it is in doing pressurized fluid extraction and solid phase extraction in the same, instrument, getting the benefits of those both those techniques. So now let's talk through setting up that Q-cup. So again, it's simple, right? You just have to, at a very basic level, weigh in your sample and go. But as a lot of you may know, how you prepare your sample cell when it comes to extraction is important. So I'm going to take the time to go over some details here. That's rare, right? Usually if you see a talk and you talk about sample preparation, it's 1 slide at max, and there's all this focus on the analysis. And the analysis is super important. I'm not taking anything away from that. But if you don't have good sample preparation, you don't often have good results. They are so very connected. So we do need to talk about these details. So I'm going to take the liberty here and talk about those details for you. So you see the cell over there on the left kind of broken up on how you would assemble it. Now, the first thing you want to do is put in your Q disc. What we use universally is our S1. And what the S1 is actually a stack of Q disc. At the heart of that stack is a G1, which is a glass fiber Q disc that filters down to 0.3 microns. So that's the final filtration you're getting is 0.3 microns. Now, if you've ever worked with glass fiber before, you know that it's not very robust. You can kind of pull it apart pretty easily. To maintain the robustness of that Q disc running in this pressurized environment, we put it in this sandwich of C9 Q disc. Our C9 is a cellulose Q disc that is 40 microns. It's very robust, and so it helps keep that integrity of that G1 Q disc. And this, again, is a universal Q disc. So regardless of application, this is the one you should use. After that, you may put in sorbents if you want to for cleanup purposes, to remove water, whatever it is you may need to do, you can add sorbent at this time. And any traditional sorbents out there on the market are, we've tested basically everything out there and they're compatible with the system. Next, you'd add your sample. So again, you can really add whatever you want from, paste to soil to wet foods. There's a variety of different samples. Basically any solid to semi-solid to low volume liquid even can run just fine in the Q-cup. Just please keep in mind that there is, you need to have some headspace in there to be able to add your solvent and so forth. So you see that outer band of that Q-cup, if you look at it, that is used to kind of load and unload it, but it also serves a secondary purpose of being sample capacity. Okay, so just make sure that your sample is not above that line. Total sample amount will vary depending on the density and how that sample packs, but you can easily run up to 30 grams of soil or 10 grams of wet food if you so desired. At this point, you would spike if you wanted to. This is where you would add your surrogates or your internal standards. Whatever you need to spike into that sample, you can do right after you have added the sample into the Q-cup. And then lastly, we are going to put on what we call our Q-screen. Q-screen is just a stainless steel mesh, and it just does a really good job of keeping the sample compact and submerged at the bottom of the Q-cup, which just leads to more efficient extraction. So that's it. It certainly took me a lot longer to talk through how you would prepare your Q cup than it would in real life. Okay, so it comes together very easily. And what I talked about here today is universal. Regardless of sample, these are the keys that you need to think about. So now I'm going to talk through a method. These are screenshots taken directly from the software, so I hope you see that the software is very user-friendly and intuitive. But also, this is particularly a pesticide method. You see that noted there, which is just a very simple, straightforward method. Note that different applications do have different methods, but we'll talk about the starting keys that you want to consider in a method. So this is the first screen that you get. You just put in your name of your method. In this case, this is a pesticides method, and your Q disk. Again, we're going to always use S1, so you choose that, and then you can choose either combined or separate collection. So you have the option to do multiple cycles, and you can either collect all those cycles in one collection file, or you can collect them separately in different collection files. That is up to you on what you're looking for to gain out of the experiment that you're running. So the next one is your cycle method. Now it may be a little bit hard to see the details that are going on here. So if you click that pencil icon in the top there, you then get the following view. So this view may be easier for you guys to see, and you see that the solvent is acetonitrile with 1% formic acid. Again, this is what you use for pesticides. You have any aqueous to organic solvent is going to be compatible on the edge. In this case, we are adding 25 milliliters of that solvent, and then we are heating to 40 degrees C and holding for 2 minutes. You do see the bubbling option there. We did not bubble for this particular method, but if we did want to bubble, that's where we'd add that into the method. And then we are doing a rinse of 5 mils. So after we add that 25 mils, we heat it to 40 C, we hold it for 2 minutes, and then we collect that. And then we add 5 mils, additional 5 mils, and collect that. So the total extraction volume in this case is 30 mils. Now, as noted, this is running in series, right? So you need to make sure you have no carryover. So we're going to do a series of 2 15 mil washes, both with the extraction solvent. The first one we're going to heat just a little bit. That just adding a little bit of heat helps it clean a little bit better. And then the second one we're not going to heat because we want to actually kind of dual purpose. We're going to use it to cool down the system. 40 C is not very hot, but we do want to bring it back down to room temperature before we start the next extraction. So it helps just equilibrate the system back to beginning stages so that you get to the next sample as quick as possible. So now I'm going to kind of jump right to data. Okay, so typically when I'm giving a presentation, I would talk about what sort of analysis we did. So whether we were going to GC, MS, or we're going to LC, MS, MS, and kind of talk through those details. But since this is kind of more of a broad scope application where I really just wanted to focus on the sample preparation, I'm skipping over all those analytical details, but know that any traditional analysis that you would do for the types of extractions we're talking about here will be applicable. And as noted in most cases, so for instance, that pesticide method we just talked to, that was a total of 30, that's at a good dilution factor typically to C. So you just go straight to analysis. You take an aliquot of that sample and you inject it into your LC MS, which is what was done for the data you see presented before you right now. Now, in some cases, you may need to concentrate or dilute your sample further depending on the application you're doing. But you'll find that a wide variety, you can set up the method such that you can go direct to analysis. So as noted, here is some pesticide data. Okay, it was done on a variety of different foods, from cookie to chip, granola bar, chocolate, hard candy. Okay, and in this case, it was 300 milligrams homogenized of those food samples and no cleanup, which is quite amazing. A lot of times you see something like, oh, I'm doing chocolate, I got to do some cleanup. But what we find on the edge is a lot of times you don't have to do that cleanup step, which is really nice. So no cleanup was used in these particular studies, and you see, maybe hard to see the details, but kind of, I just wanted, again, a broad view here of what was going on. And so you see, the list of different pesticides for the different food samples, and acceptable recoveries and RSD values were achieved throughout for everything that was looked at. So this is just a nice kind of overall look of a set of data, pesticide data in different food stuff. So now kind of switching gears a little bit, let's look at a different application. So here is the extraction of semi-volatile organic compounds out of soil. So in this case, kind of different, right? We did 300 milligrams of food. Now we're doing 20 grams of wet soil. Now in this case, we have a wet sample. So we are going to mix that wet sample with 30 grams of sodium sulfate. That's going to aid in removing the water. Okay, and then another thing we do here is we put 2 grams of fluorosil on top of that sample. So the list here is kind of the more volatile compounds that you see listed, and the Q cup is open at the top, right? And so there is a possibility of losing some of those volatile compounds. So to minimize that effect, we put that 2 grams of fluorosil on top, because that fluorosil absorbs those compounds. So what it does is absorb those compounds if you did lose a little bit, and then you're able to extract them out. So that's just putting your best foot forward to make sure you have the best recoveries overall. So then again, we have our listed of recovery values here. So you see we've got acceptable recovery and RSD values pretty much across the board for all of the compounds listed. These are compounds 1 through 38 in the spike mix that we were running on this particular sample. And here we have compounds 39 through 73. So overall, there was 73 compounds total, and regardless of those 73 compounds, we get acceptable recoveries and RSD values for everything we looked here. So I kind of showed the data of 2 very different applications, right? People doing pesticides in food are probably not doing semi-volatile organic compounds in soil. So you see the flexibility of the system doing some both very key applications, but different applications at that. So that's kind of the last point I want to make before I kind of go through my conclusions, is the edge is flexible to meet your needs. I kind of already mentioned, regardless of sample, whether it is a semi-solid, solid, even liquid at low volumes, you can run that on the edge. And that spans a wide variety of different application areas, and probably beyond what I have listed here, right? So there's just, it's very applicable in our world, and can be used in many different genres. So to conclude, I hope you've seen that the Edge offers a rapid, simple, and efficient solvent extraction, that it gets excellent recoveries and repeatability for a wide variety of applications, and it's amenable to many applications. And really, it's just a great opportunity to modernize your lab, which I think is needed. It's needed in this world. We need to bring in, and again, those benefits of having reports and traceability. I think as with time, those are going to be necessary. We're going to have these for the sample preparation moving forward. And so we were able to offer that with the Edge. I would be remiss. I work for CEM Corporation, and one of the most wonderful things about CEM Corporation is that we are where you are, and we have many different associates located throughout the United States. And you're like, wait a minute, this is an international webinar. Someone in the United States isn't going to be very helpful for us. But the reality is, it's across the globe as well. So here you see a more international take of where we are, and I hope you see that we are where you are. And I work on a global scale, trying to get people, to run the Edge and to see how this can fit well in their lab. And so I hope I've shown that for you here today as well. Here are the faces behind all the work that I presented here today. This is my team that I am so thankful and honored to work with. You have myself, and then you have our senior scientist, Candace Cashman, our product specialist, Brittany Fessler, and our application scientist, Benedict Liu. And they are all instrumental in me being able to present what I presented here today. We can be reached at molecular.support@cem.com, and we'd be happy to address any questions you have. So again, that is molecular.support@cem.com, and we monitor that email address 24/7, so we would be happy to hear from you. Doesn't matter where you're located, anywhere on this globe, please reach out and we would be happy to address any questions you have. And again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you here today. I really appreciated it.